Greetings, I'm Zachary Hepner, and pleased to share this Dvar Torah with you for Parashat Re'eh. Deuteronomy 14 has the following themes. It starts with Banim atem, you are God's children, and do not mutilate your body over a deceased. The dietary laws ending with the prohibition of cooking a kid in its mother's milk. Charity laws towards the levite, stranger, orphan, and the destitute, with the imperative patoaf tiftach, open your hands. Let's digress, because many relevant themes and connections in the first episode of James Joyce's Ulysses relate to Devarim 14. The name of the first chapter is relevant because Joyce did not name his chapters, but he did supply schemas corresponding to the episodes in Homer's Odyssey. The first episode corresponds to Telemachus, Odysseus' son, who leaves Ithaca to search for his missing father. Now hold that in mind. Starting on the morning of the 3rd of Tamuz, 5664, or June 16th, 1904, the Irish characters Malakhi or Buck Mulligan, Stephen, Dedalus, and the Oxford Englishman Haines wake up and leave Martello Tower southeast of Dublin. Stephen is not searching for his father like Telemachus, but themes of paternity are present. Mulligan criticizes or mocks Stephen. Stephen, cynical towards religion, had refused to kneel and pray at the bedside of his dying mother, even though he will dress with traditional black mourning clothes for his mother. He refused to accede to her final wish. Mulligan found this action offensive, and Stephen has some remorse that he offended Mulligan. Stephen, obsessed with his mother's death, had made steps to end his obsession with his past. Later, Mulligan patronizes an old milkwoman and has milk to drink. The topic veers to material and money matters, since Stephen has rotten teeth in contrast to Mulligan, who has white teeth with gold. The final mention of money will be quoted later. Dissatisfied with British colonialism in Ireland, I quote, "After all, I should think you are able to free yourself. Are you your own master, it seems to me?" "I am the servant of two masters," Stephen says, "an English and an Italian." "Italian," Haines said. "A crazy queen, old and jealous, kneel down before me." "And a third," Stephen said. "There is who wants me for odd jobs." "Italian," Haines said again. "What do you mean?" "The Imperial British State," Stephen answered, "his color rising, and the Holy Roman Catholic and Apostolic Church." End quote. At the end of the first chapter, Stephen had been mulling that he will have to surrender his key of the tower to Mulligan. He's ultimately practical and gives the key to Mulligan. I will quote it later. Now, back to Devarim 14 and 15. Banim atem laHashem Elokeichem. You, Israelites, are God's children, a holy nation. The prohibition to a mourner against self-mutilation. The Torah is not jumping topics. It's descriptive and prescriptive. Banim atem, you are God's children. You may have lost your father and mother, but you are God's children, and therefore you will never be orphaned, since you will always have one living parent. Both Telemachus and Stephen struggle with notions of their paternity self-identity. Stephen's religious identity hurts his relationship with his mother, yet the Torah has no qualms integrating the significance of parent-child relationships to God and the covenantal worshipper's relationship. While the Torah makes it clear that every Israelite has three parents, Stephen says, "I am the servant of two masters." But then he adds, "and a third." Wow. I'm going to call this connection a triple Mulligan hole in one. On to the dietary laws. The forbidden animals, fowl, fish, would not be strikingly related to the story of these Irishmen having breakfast, except that the dietary laws conclude with Lo tevashel gadi b'chalev yimo. Do not cook a kid in its mother's milk. And who walks in the story? an old peddling milk woman. Mulligan buys her milk. The words are relevant. Starting as God's children, don't become unsensitive to the nature of mother's milk that the calf uses to suckle and sustain. Mothers have the milk of kindness. Don't become desensitized to that lesson. Stephen has lost touch with his mother's pain when she saw him refuse to kneel and pray as her final request. The Torah moves on to taking care of the levite, lending to the poor, the orphan, and giving charity, and has the famous phrase, patoach tiftach, you shall surely open your hand. All these themes are relevant to the end of Ulysses, episode 1. Mulligan scolds Stephen for discussing money in front of Haines. And later, I quote, "You are not coming in?" Buck Mulligan asked. Later on, Haines said, "Not on my breakfast." Stephen turned away. "I'm going, Mulligan," he said. "Give us that key, Kinch," Buck Mulligan said, "to keep my chemise flat." Stephen handed him the key. Buck Mulligan laid it across his heaped clothes. "And 2p," he said, "for a pint. Throw it there." Stephen threw 2 pennies on the soft heap. Dressing, undressing, Buck Mulligan, erect with joint hands before him, said solemnly, "He who stealeth from the poor lendeth to the Lord. Thus spake Zarathustra. His body plunged. His plump body plunged." End quote. Themes of the poor, giving, lending, throwing money, even an allusion to charity and not taking the poor person's chemise or shirt are present. But what is the significance about Stephen being in possession to the key to the tower? He obsesses over giving it away to Mulligan, and that he gives of it of his own volition. The connection is that the word key is, no pun intended, the key to giving. Key is mafteach, which is about patoach tiftach, you shall surely open your hand. Giving is a voluntary action, and you must open your hand and give to the needy. Devarim 14 reminds us that we are never orphaned because we have 3 parents, but don't lose sensitivity to the mother's milk that your parents have given, and be extra sensitive to the needy, the hayatom, orphans, and everybody who asks, "Open your hands." Wishing you a Shabbat Shalom.